Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Daniel Magyar is a personal trainer, strength coach, and nutrition expert based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Daniel specializes in using the X3 Bar Elite Variable Resistance Training System, designed by Dr. John Jakish, which is touted as a revolutionary and research-validated bar and band strength training system. Daniel combines his strength training with a carnivore diet and fasting to help his clients lose tremendous amounts of weight in short periods of time. He is the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Weight Loss Without Plateau. He has personally coached over 1,000 transformations himself and indirectly helped tens of thousands of people via social media posts and videos. We learned about Daniel in episode 415 of Boundless Body Radio, where we hosted Howe. Howe is the owner of a Paradise for Parents, which includes 4 assisted living homes in Phoenix, Arizona. They are having incredible success by implementing low carbohydrate and carnivore diets, along with engaging exercise programs with their elderly patients. You can find Daniel on Instagram at DM_trainer. Daniel, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it.
One of my favorite episodes that I've ever done in my life was with Howe. It was one of the times I was so close to crying during the episode because I was just so inspired with what he is doing and the program that he is running and the results that he's getting with his people. It was just absolutely awe-inspiring. And as soon as he mentioned your name in the podcast, I wasted maybe 2 seconds after the episode to get onto Instagram and message you to ask you to be on this show. I think what the work that you're doing is absolutely wonderful, and I couldn't wait to get you on.
Thank you so much. And everybody loves Howe. Everybody loves Howe. He is doing God's work. He's truly helping people. His heart is truly in helping people, and he is very genuine and honest. So I'm sure that was a great episode, as well as he had episode with Dr. Sean Baker, and where he talked about his assisted living homes, and we worked together on certain projects.
Yeah, fantastic. He seems like such a great guy. Talk about somebody who got into the business of assisted living because he really just thought of it as like a business opportunity. He wanted to make some money. And before long, he started caring so much for his patients and seeing their quality of life that he wanted to invest in them, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So definitely make sure the audience, if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to 415. But Daniel, I don't know that much about your personal story. I know you are in Las Vegas. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between what Las Vegas is actually like and what you thought Las Vegas might be like?
So Las Vegas for me is totally different than for some local who works in the industry at nightlife. So Las Vegas for me is an absolute dream vacation life with the best entertainment and best dining in the entire planet. I am not affiliated with the nightlife at all. I don't go to nightclubs, strip clubs, drugs, alcohol. I actually never seen that out here. So I don't really talk to people who live lifestyle like that. So I just live here, in the Northwest area, which is a pretty quiet area. My little bubble. I pretty much operate my life from my house. I got everything inside my house that I need, so we barely leave. I know when we leave, we go for the shows, we go for, we go to the great steakhouses and restaurants, and mostly my Las Vegas meetings are with my clients. When people fly into town, they message me, "Hey Daniel, I'm in town. Do you want to grab a dinner?" So these are the people I hang out with. So to me, Las Vegas is the most incredible experience I ever had. I mean, I love the palm trees. I love the desert. I love red mountains. It's sunny 365. It literally never gets gray sky. Before, when I was in Minnesota, that's why I was getting depressed. I had a really good life in Minnesota. I had a couple of businesses. Everything was going very well. Just couldn't really picture myself being there for long term. I was always thinking, how do I get to Las Vegas? Las Vegas was my lifetime destination. As soon as I landed in Las Vegas, I knew this is the city where I have to live. I didn't really know why. And then it was like 10 years ago. And in Minnesota, I was pretty much planning my escape.
Wow. Yeah, well, I've actually heard that. People from Minnesota are not going to like this, but I've heard that a lot from people in Minnesota. So very interesting observation. Now, originally, you're from Slovakia, is that correct?
Yes.
Very cool. When did you move over to the United States?
2013. September 25th, 2013. My sisters moved here first. One came in 99, the other one came in 2000. Actually, Actually, I think 2001, 3 months right after the Twin Towers were bombed in New York. She landed in
Wow.
New York. So yeah, since it's been well over 20 years since they got them here, and I finished my school back home and pretty much flew out here afterwards. And they were in Minnesota, so I went strictly to Minnesota so I can be with them and start my life from there.
Gotcha. Have you always been interested in fitness?
Since I was 10 years old, pretty much. What
Wow.
happened, we had like a small little gym because back in my country, there was always deficiency of money, right? So you couldn't just go out to a public gym and pay for the membership because that would be like 25 bucks. Households back then in my area didn't usually have a spare 25 for the gym for the kids. So we had like a small homemade gym in our apartment building. And we used to go down there. There was one neighbor who was like a bus driver. He was benching like 135, and he was our hero. Like we couldn't believe how much weight he's pushing, and we were just jumping around and doing some push-ups and trying to do a pull-up and making fun of each other and all that, like kids having fun. And he would be just showing us exercises, and we would try to like mimic him and do kind of what he did. But then I got my first membership when I was 14. I started exercising at the public gym.
Yeah, gotcha. And were you more interested in strength training versus cardio at the time?
Bodybuilding, strict bodybuilding. That was pretty much what inspired me.
Gotcha. And so when you moved to Minnesota and you started, I'm assuming you started your own business in Minnesota. How were you strength training your people then? Like what kind of methods were you using?
So I would come to Minnesota and I would get a membership at Lifetime Fitness in Eagan, Minnesota. I used to train there, and I would be just working out there daily. I built some friendships. We built a small community. We started hanging out outside of the gym as well. And then people kind of started recognizing me and started calling me by name. It's like, hey, Daniel, how is it going? And we kind of became friends with people who used to go at the same time as I did. And then they asked me for workout plans, diet advices and stuff. And I remember actually my first meal plan was sold to a person who was like 78. And he paid me $75 for the meal plan and training plan. And I spent like whole night working on it. And I brought him like, literally, I printed like a small book full of papers and pictures of exercises and explanations and everything. I mean, I put my heart and soul into that paper to bring it over to him. And I spent like another hour explaining it to him. So when he paid me that 75, I realized, wow, like I actually got paid by doing something in fitness, by making a meal plan and a workout plan. So from there on, I started focusing on it.
Yeah, that's great. Were you looking for any specific clientele?
No, not at that time.
Not at that time. And you weren't like focusing on like bodybuilding or anything. It was just whoever you could get.
Just anybody I could help, lose weight, build muscle, bodybuilding, didn't really matter to me. I just needed clients.
Did you
I
have a
was
physical?
at the very beginning. I was at the very beginning, making very little money, speaking very little English. The bills were always the same every single month. They didn't give me any break, so I just had to pay my bills. I had to take every job I had. I had part-time jobs, I had full-time jobs. I was a server at one point. I was bouncing, I was training people. I was trying to just pay for my bills basically for the first year and a half.
Yeah, wow. It's tough when you're getting started. I mean, people don't realize like you have to establish a business. You've got to have recurring clients. They don't just come to you. They don't just find you. You have to really work hard and get out
Exactly.
there, get after it to go find people to train. It's tough.
Exactly. And especially social media wasn't that big 10 years ago. It sounds crazy, but only 10 years ago, social media was not where it is now. We didn't have podcasts like we're doing right now. We didn't have podcasts on Spotify. We didn't have as much marketing tools as we have on social media right now. There was no reels, there was no stories, there was no live videos on Facebook. They didn't offer these options as they offer these days.
Yeah, definitely. It's also interesting, like when you're getting started personal training, you do think it's the staying up late and creating the perfect meal plan and the perfect periodized workout plan. And you soon realize that when your clients come to you on a Tuesday, they might have a shoulder that's hurting them, or they might be in a bad mood and want to talk more about personal things. Like there's a lot more that goes into it, just besides the perfect meal plan and the perfect exercise program.
Personal training is certainly a therapy as well. I had many, many clients who were coming to me for years and years and years, just really to keep some form of activity in their lifestyle. And most importantly, for their mental health. Like they felt good at the gym. They had this buddy who they could talk to about pretty much anything. I really learned how to understand people's problems and give my best advice and opinion on a certain subject. So you kind of become a therapist as well in personal training world. Also, online coaching is a little bit similar, and there's not as much though. Not as much as personal training.
Yeah, I find myself doing inexpensive therapy sessions as well. And it's funny, back at the gym I used to work at, this was several years ago, I remember that we had a trainer who ended up firing his client because the trainer didn't look like he was getting any results. And the guy came to him to lose weight and he was still really big. And so in the trainer's mind, he said, well, this guy isn't improving. He's not seeing the results that I'm wanting for him. So I'm going to fire him as a client because he's making me look bad. And I so strongly disagreed with that, not only because it's a stupid business move, but it's like you don't know why these people are actually coming to see you. You're like, yes, they want to lose weight, but there's so many other reasons. They need our help. They need our support. They need you to be there for them, not to freaking fire them because you think they're making you look bad. It's ridiculous.
I never fired a client in my life. And if you have a doubt, why is the person coming to you? Ask him. Just ask him.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, what type of value am I bringing to your life? What is the real value? I just want to know that you're not just wasting money on the services that I provide. I want to make sure that I'm actually important in your journey.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation once in my entire life with one client back in Minnesota, actually. And she said, you just prevent me from blowing up to 400. I'm like,
Wow.
all right, well, you're 340. So you were 350 when I met you 2 years ago. So it took you 2 years to drop 10 pounds. But now I know my value. If I wasn't around, you would be 450 by now.
That's right. That's right. That's such an important point. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So how did your knowledge of let's stick with personal training evolve over time as far as methodologies? Like what things did you think were true then that you no longer think are true now?
Oh my God, so much, so much. Pretty much I started with the pure bodybuilding knowledge, right? Bodybuilding, 6 meals a day, cup and a half of rice with 8 ounces of chicken, some broccoli with it, some cardio, weightlifting 6 days a week, one muscle group per day. One muscle group per week. And I've been following that for a long time. I haven't really done that well doing that. I competed in bodybuilding. So I pretty much just took that knowledge that I learned in bodybuilding. I was trying to pass it on to people, but it was really hard to make an average person eat 6 times a day, prepare all that food, and bring all that Tupperware to their business meetings and stuff. It doesn't work that way. These people are going to eat out. You pretty much can't eat healthy carbs when you're in a restaurant. Like if you're trying to eat carbs in a restaurant, it's going to be bad carbs. Like also it's full of seed oils. They deep fry almost everything. They put sauces with the sugar, high sugar content and high fructose corn syrup almost in anything. So people will eat out in restaurants. You just got to find a way how they can order the best food and how they can prep their food as easy as possible when they cook at home, and they don't have to, take it and carry it everywhere with them. So this was pretty much my entire Minnesota training. I was training people just like they were bodybuilders. I was training them like I was expecting them to do what I did in my bodybuilding show because I didn't know any better. Now I found John Jatridge in 2016 through one of the bodybuilders, rest in peace, Phil Harnett, was a Mr. American Bob. And he was talking about this exercise system that is revolutionary because this exercise system actually works along with the body's force production, and there's a different strength curves and partial repetitions and absolute fatigue and all these things he was mentioning. So I looked up John and I started following John, and he was talking a lot about exercise science, which of course made sense to me. So it made sense, but I wasn't convinced. I'm like, I was just following that science for a couple of years because I couldn't believe that I can just substitute everything I do for one set with resistant bands. It was really hard for me to process it. And then pandemic came and I had no other option. I was living, so before the pandemic, I met my wife, flew back to Europe, married her, then we flew to Bali and we lived in Bali on like an abandoned island for a while. That sounds pretty good, but you have pretty low quality food on these islands. and there's no gym whatsoever. So I lost all of my muscle, gained tons of body fat. I was like 258, 29% of body fat,
Wow.
looking horrible. And when I came back to the United States, I pretty much ordered the X3 because all the gyms were shut down. And I started training with the X3, and I couldn't believe how quickly I was putting on all of my lost muscle. So I think I put on like 30 pounds of muscle within a matter of months. It was ridiculous. Like the rebound was ridiculous. Every single day I was feeling like I'm about to burst through my skin.
Wow.
So I was so excited about it. I'm regaining all of my lost muscle mass. And along with the H3, I started studying more fasting and carnivore because the old nutritional recommendations were just not a thing anymore. I wasn't a bodybuilder anymore. I was interested in something new, something more efficient, something better. So I started looking up more carnivore diet and fasting because that's what goes along with the X3. That's the recommendation. And I found Sean Baker, who I had a pleasure with speaking with a couple of weeks ago. And he promotes a lot of carnivore diet, and he explains the science behind carnivore diet, and it all made sense to me. And I started trying it, and I accomplished phenomenal results. And as soon as I had a very powerful tool, which is X3, that really only takes you 20, 30 minutes to complete in a day. And then I had a carnivore diet plus fasting that you don't have to eat multiple times a day. You can just eat once or twice, and then you can fast also for the whole day if you're not hungry at all, or for different purposes. This is pretty easy to follow. I mean, I'm not taking up too much of your time. I'll make you work out 20, 30 minutes a day, and then you eat, a good portion of steak and eggs, and you're good for the whole day. Rest of it, the body is going to take care of. So you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours of working out, prepping your food, and being on top of your game with the meal timing. You can actually fast, eat a massive portion of steak and eggs, train fasted in the morning, or it doesn't matter really when you train in a day. I don't really pay attention to it. I just focus on consistency. Every single day, making sure that I'm getting my exercise in and I'm getting all of my calories and protein in from the great sources. So this gave me a very powerful tool that allowed me to help thousands of people accomplish their goals. Personally, I coached over 1,000 people in my coaching program that I've helped pretty much in everything, like you name it. I have people with autoimmune disease, from Crohn's to celiac disease to diabetes type 1, type 2, insulin resistance. I had people with the messed up blood work. I had people with the thrown off insulin sensitivity, triglycerides to HDL ratio off the charts, CRP 15 milligrams. I've seen so many things. And I've helped all these people get better physically and mentally through diet and exercise.
That's
So
incredible.
that was the game changer for me as a coach, because now I have tools that don't require much attention and much work. Before, it was a lot harder. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have results I have today.
Yeah. I often will tell people, like, maybe that old advice does work. Maybe that is the best thing, to eat those 5, 6 meals a day, do all the meal prepping. Maybe it does, but just practically speaking, it doesn't work. People can't do it. You're right. People are way too busy. And at the end of the day, I'm more likely to see them up at a restaurant or grabbing crappy fast food or processed food, like you said earlier. And so, yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's such an interesting story. If you're listening to this and not watching this, I think you, just like I, would find it very hard to believe that you got up to be that big and that much body fat, because you're absolutely jacked right now. It's super, super cool.
Yeah, so right now I'm 270 at 10% of body fat.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. And I am happy to report that this last weekend I was able to meet Sean Baker for the very first time in person. I was able to meet Dr. Anthony Chafee. These guys are the kindest, nicest people you would ever meet. Sean is so busy during this conference. Everybody's stopping in to talk to him. He does his big presentation, then does a panel afterwards, and he just stands next to the stage and will talk to anybody who's there waiting for him. I helped one lady who's kind of like getting a little bit nervous, and she wanted to go take a picture with him. I'm like, no, he's totally cool. Let's go over there. Like, I'll introduce you. And like, he was super cool, such a kind guy. I really love following him. So that's great. Before we get to the diet stuff, which I find fascinating, let's talk about the X3 system itself. Most people, I think, would hear resistance bands and they would think about the kind of pink or light green bands at the gym, and you tie it to something and do some, maybe external rotations in your shoulder, or maybe you do some mobility drills with the shoulders or whatever. Like, they're not like a useful tool. Can you tell us why resistance bands are actually a fantastic tool for resistance training?
Because they deliver massive resistance. Like you said, resistant bands are being recognized as some rehabilitation tool. After you get in a car accident, you build yourself back up through rehabilitation process with the resistant bands. However, nobody thinks of resistant bands as a 600-700 pound force at the top of your deadlift, which X3 actually can do if you're a really tall guy. Nobody talks about a 500-pound resistance at the top of the chest press when you have a thick, like inch layer of latex folded behind your back and you push it in front of you, because resistant bands, they get light on your chest, but as you push them out, as the latex stretches, they deliver more resistance. However, that really synchronizes with the force production of human body, because human body has a different force production. You're the weakest at the chest level right here. So if you're pushing the chest press, you're the weakest here, but you're much stronger as you're pushing the bar further away. And the latex gets a lot heavier as you push it further away. So it does pretty much two things. Thing number one, you protect the joints, tendons, ligaments, because when you don't overload the weakest range of motion, you don't stress out your joints, tendons, ligaments. And that's why I benefit the most, because I was also doing powerlifting. And when I was doing powerlifting, I destroyed my joints to a point where I was 25 years old and I was aching like I'm 75. I'm not joking. I couldn't put shoes on. I couldn't put my shoes on. It took me 20 minutes to really get ready in the morning, which takes me like 2 minutes, 3 minutes right now. I mean, the stiffness of the body would be ridiculous. So I benefit a lot from joint protection. And also, you're using a lot of heavy forces at the strongest range, but at the strongest range of the exercise, you also engage the most muscle mass. So that's why I don't stress out the joints, because now the muscle takes control over the entire resistance. And you have exercises that train every single body part with the H3 system. You have exercises for quads, for hamstrings, for calves, shoulders, biceps, triceps, chest, back, core, you name it. Pretty much all the exercises are going to be exercised, whether directly or indirectly via other movements. So the X3 system doesn't create a lot of structural damage, so you don't get as sore as from weightlifting. That allows you to train more frequently. Soreness is not a good indication of a muscle growth or muscle stimulus.
Thank you.
You didn't have to be sore at all to grow muscle. I was not sore in the last 4 years at all. And I came from 258, 29% body fat to 270, 10% of body fat. Zero soreness whatsoever. Pure resistant band training, nothing else. And pretty much you were trying to fatigue the muscle to a point where you can't even move the bar. So you start with the full repetitions, and of course, as you have muscle loaded with the ATP and glycogen and creatine phosphate, which are the energy resources for the muscle, you are performing full reps, full reps, full reps. But then as you are running out of the energy resources, plus the muscle is being filled up with the lactic acid that's causing you pain, plus the muscle is becoming damaged, you can't handle as many full repetitions anymore. So with the weights, you pretty much just quit your set. With the resistant bands, you have a special ability to start with partial repetitions, because the bands will adjust to your current power. So if you only run on 50% gas, the latex will only stretch 50%. So you don't have to release the tension. You can actually keep doing half repetitions and the same hypoxia as you did the full repetitions. So that pushes you to the whole nother level of fatigue that you can't even accomplish with the weights, because with the weights, you might want to imitate that with the drop set, where you're doing a drop set with a heavy weight, but as soon as you let the weight go, you break the hypoxia and you let the blood flow and oxygen run into the muscle, which is not beneficial, because you're trying to stay in a state of hypoxia as long as possible for the most optimal muscular stimulus. So that's what X3 does for you. It helps you protect the joints, build strength, build muscle, achieve the absolute fatigue, and get it all done within 20, 30 minutes a day.
That's incredible. So what you're talking about here is progressive resistance. As you're engaging the band and pulling it, you're actually creating more resistance, effectively increasing the weight of an exercise. Where if you lift up 5 pounds from the ground, that's just the weight's interaction to gravity on planet Earth that makes it 5 pounds. It could be 5 pounds overhead. It could be 5 pounds held at your side. That's going to have vastly different effects. And I think about an exercise in particular, like a deadlift. I see a lot of people load up a barbell, and throw a bunch of plates on a bar that they leave on the ground. Okay, well, if you're going down to grab that barbell, you're lifting an extremely heavy weight in your most compromised position, where I think a lot of people can really get hurt. And I don't think they really realize the difference between those two types of resistance.
I blew my back that way.
Did you really?
I was in a 650 deadlift, sumo deadlift at the gym, and I was like a couple inches up in the air, and I heard a loud pop in my back. And I fell down on the ground. It was the worst pain ever. I couldn't stand up tall. Back then, I was in a mindset of like, I got to get it done. So I still went to do some hamstring curls. So I finished that workout. And then the same night, I went to Bone Thugs and Harmony concert with my brothers-in-laws. And I remember standing in the crowd. I was sweating my ass off. I was in so much pain, it was ridiculous. And on the way out of the building, we had to find a way that doesn't include any stairs because I couldn't lift my foot in a height of the stair. So it was horrible pain. It took me about 6 to 8 months to get it back together. I haven't done any chiropractors, no doctors, no shots, no nothing. Just let the body figure it out.
Yeah, so 6 to 8 months. Think about that, dude. This is why injury prevention has gone so much higher up my priority list when I train my clients. If I put one of my clients out for 6 to 8 months, they would be a disaster. They would come back way heavier, way less muscle, all of the work they had worked on, to build their body up and to be strong. You'd lose all of it. You'd lose all the bone density. Like that is horrific. So injury prevention just has to be so high up on people's priority lists.
Muscle catabolism starts after 11 days of not stimulating the muscle.
Wow.
So 11 days of no resistance training whatsoever starts muscle catabolism.
Wow.
Pretty much, if you take away the reason from a central nervous system to keep the muscle, it will just burn it. Muscle is just defensive mechanism. The body pretty much protects itself from the resistance that you're creating with resistant training. And it doesn't only happen from the resistant band training. It could be a calisthenics, which is your body weight. It could be resistant training with the weights. Now, they all have different cons and pros, but pretty much as long as you're engaging the muscle and you're fatiguing the muscle, the central nervous system has an urge to keep it. You stop using it, it's gone.
Yep, that's right. Your body, we never lived in this world that we live in now where there's a caloric surplus. We have way more than enough calories. As we were evolving, it was the other way around. We were trying to be as efficient and economical as possible, save energy for lean times, because there's going to be lots of lean times. There's going to be lots of winters where we may or may not get as many calories as we need. And so we need to live off our body fat. And as humans, we're very, very good at living off our body fat. Fasting, like you mentioned earlier, we are excellent at doing things like fasting. And so, yeah, I think that's so important to consider. And I'm glad that you gave us kind of a reference range weight for your deadlift. Like if you at any point in your life, regardless of whether you're doing it now or not, were able to lift 650 pounds in a deadlift, I think that alone speaks to the X3 as far as resistance goes. I'm sure you're getting very, very, very heavy deadlifts with bands. Again, I think most people would think like, how are you able to get a band up to be that heavy to challenge Daniel? But absolutely, you can do that. These things are really, really strong and they pull hard.
Come and try it. That's what I would say. Like I would love to have people try it. If I could, I would just let everybody try it. I'll put the SS7 band. I'll double it up under the X3 platform, and if you lift it, I'll give you $100. Like that's actually what I used to do out on the strip in Las Vegas at the very beginning of the pandemic. I used to make people try to lift the SS7 band for the deadlift, and if they did make it, I would pay them $20. And if they didn't make it, the entry was $10. You know how you have in Las Vegas those competitions where they are hanging on the bar, and just if you can't hang past, I think 2 minutes, they'll give you $100. So I was doing pretty much the same thing with the S3.
That's hilarious. I love that response. Yeah. That's great. Now, one thing that you just mentioned, I think is also really interesting to point out. You mentioned doubling the band below the platform, which the X3 does come with a platform, which is great. But that makes this system so versatile. Like if I want to deadlift, my range of motion is going to be very, very low. I want it to get heavy very, very fast. So it gives you the ability to double the band underneath so that you get that hard, heavy pull for a really relatively kind of short range of motion started in a low position. Whereas if I'm doing something like an overhead press, not only can I use a lighter band, but I'm going to single it up. I'm not going to double it up in the same way. So it's a lot easier for me to engage the weight low, maybe in like a squatted position, then squat all the way up with the resistance and then push the bar overhead. So you've got both options there.
So certain exercises will be doubled up and certain exercises will be single. That's why it is important to watch the introduction videos or sign up for my X3 group. It's free to enter Daniel Magyar X3 group. You sign into that group and all the exercises are recorded. I explain all the exercises, how to properly position the band under the platform, how to properly execute the exercise. And then I show it actually on the video, how to perform it. So if you want to learn more about that training, don't hesitate, come in my group. We have a great community there. We pretty much talk on all different topics from nutrition to exercise.
Yeah, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that. I'm the type of person that likes to kind of do my own research and learn about certain things myself, which means if I go that route, I spend way more time doing the wrong thing and goofing things up and breaking things. And you're talking about a human body. Like, this is where you really need to invest some time and even some money, if needed, in a good coach who can teach you how to do this the right way and get you, your feet on the ground running in the right direction rather than trying to goof this up yourself. You will be far less efficient. So I really appreciate that you offer that. I think that's a great thing. Do you what kind of you mentioned lots of different exercises, and I know how versatile the X3 is, but you must have like 2 or 3 like really favorite exercises. Do you have a few that you just absolutely love that you would not want to live without?
Chest press, rows, and deadlift.
I would for sure have rows and deadlift on a band system like that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, chest press is
That,
one of them too. I like them. I mean, I enjoy doing these exercises. Um, these are the 3 that I really look forward to. The ones that I completely hate are the front squats. I just want to die after. It's ridiculously cardio taxing. I mean, I'm about to spit my lungs out after the
yeah,
front squat. Like, nobody talks to me after front squat. I'm just laying down on my back, trying to catch my breath. And the more muscle you have, the more oxygen blood flow requires to recover the muscle. So the more cardio taxing it is.
yeah.
So yeah, it just takes me about a good 15 minutes to get back on my feet and make a phone call after a front squat.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I can definitely relate to that for sure. And that also speaks to the level of intensity you really truly need to get to for strength training to be very, very effective. You've mentioned out maxing it out. Like when you're using this band, having a nice and slow tempo. Front squats, you might be breathing very heavily just because of the nature of it. You're using those big muscle groups, like you said, and bringing a lot of oxygen. But some of these exercises, you may not even be breathing that much. You may be able to maintain nasal breathing, but you kind of get to this place of like you're shaking almost, and you really
Yep.
just can't move the weight any further. And then, like you said, you can work in different ranges of motion. Like if I'm failed at the end range of motion, maybe I can go to the mid range of motion and fail there, and then go to the outer end of the range of motion and fail there. So there's tons of different options, but that intensity is just so critical, isn't it?
Right. So often people ask me, what is the proper way to breathe with the X3? Like, let's say I inhale on the way when I'm rolling, right? And in the eccentric part, when I'm going the opposite way, I exhale. Um, well, you can do that only for a certain period of time. You can only do that until the fatigue really comes, and then you're just huffing and puffing for dear life. I tell people like, yeah, you'll be able to inhale in this part and exhale in that part. It's fine until the real fatigue comes. And when the real fatigue comes, you're just trying to stay calm and you're trying to push as far as possible. Now, the biggest thing is to me, writing down your performance, because each time you write down your performance, the next workout, you're trying to beat your previous performance. That's pretty much right here is the golden age to progress. You want to build muscle, you want to get bigger. There's different debates about time and attention, slow reps versus fast reps, explosive, etc., etc. Long story short, the golden age of the growth is progressive overload. You do more than you did before, the body will respond with the growth. So pretty much if you keep introducing your body to the same stress over and over and over, you will not progress. You're going to stay the same for a long time. But if you start increasing the stress, the body will follow and will start building more muscle.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I love the way you explain that. And it's like that's the objective measure of what most people's goal are. Do you want to be stronger? Then strength can be measured, and we want to record that. How much time did it take you to complete a set on which band is really, really important. And if that's not going up, then you're doing something wrong. You might not be getting enough protein, you might not be taking enough time between workouts and getting enough recovery. Like all of that is so important. So I'm so glad you went there with that. I do want to talk about protein and diets. When was the first time you heard about a carnivore diet?
2016, when Sean Baker started doing it.
2016, that's early, man.
Yeah, so I saw it. I was watching it. Listen, carnivore diet should sound absolutely insane to you when you never heard about it. When you first hear about it, it should be like the most insane thing ever because you've been told your whole life something else. But also, then you start looking at your own life quality and you start realizing that, all right, well, I don't feel the best I ever felt. Like, yes, I'm exhausted. I sleep 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and I'm still exhausted. I'm 35% body fat. I'm insulin resistant. My blood pressure's through the roof. I look back and I live life in hidings. I'm not out there pursuing things, but I'm hiding in shadows. Let's just give it a shot. Let's see if this carnivore diet is going to help me because I probably tried every single diet in the world. I've done paleo, I've been vegan, I've done keto, I've done carb cycling. When I got to the point where I'm going to have everything with moderation, because that's normal, you can have a little bit of this and that, and you start convincing yourself that every new diet plan or food plan you find is pretty much the right decision for you because you do not have knowledge. Now, if you do have knowledge about human organism, you are not lost. You're not running away from one meal plan to the other one, to the other one, to the other one, because you understand how body works, what are two essential macronutrients, which is protein and fat. Carbohydrates are not essential, absolutely not necessary for a human organism. Body produces sugar on its own. The consumption of carbohydrate is not necessary. The body does have ability to process carbohydrates, yes, but now we're running into more issues as the population is consuming more and more carbohydrates because the thing number one that is destroying our population is insulin resistance. That's what it all starts with the insulin resistance. Almost everybody is insulin resistant to a certain degree in the United States and people who I talk to. Now, what is insulin resistance? It's when the cells start rejecting the energy. So what's going to happen with all that energy that's insulin carrying when the cell actually rejects it because you've been beating up the receptor on that cell for so long? Well, the insulin has to deliver that energy somewhere. And it stores that energy right in your fat cells around the waistline. And your waistline is just massive, big, and fat. And you see people with all these big stomachs, that is pretty much a standard in 2023 in the United States, thinking that it's normal, thinking that it's okay. And that's actually a metabolic disease. Like, we have to understand the importance of being insulin sensitive. Like insulin sensitivity is the exact opposite from the insulin resistance. And insulin sensitivity pretty much keeps you away from the morbid obesity, which is then associated with many, many more risk factors towards the heart disease and other metabolic disease. So when we look at people these days, they're insulin resistant, they don't stop eating the foods they're eating, then they're making them insulin resistant, which is a lot of seed oils and sugars and alcohol all combined in one portion. Average portion of a person might be burger, fries, and some Coke, which is just a bunch of trans fat, seed oils, a sugar, and you get tiny bit of protein that is pretty much just going to get lost in all the cons of that meal. And people eat it, they turn insulin resistant, and body is in a state where it only takes very little energy for presence. That's pretty much insulin resistance. Body doesn't take much energy for present situation. It stores it for future. And now here's the reason why. Human organism didn't have sufficient amount of calories through the evolution. When we go back to Homo habilis, to Homo erectus, to Neanderthals, to Homo sapiens, our ancestors did not have a chance to have a sufficient amount of 4,000 calories every single day and just have fun by the fire. There were days when they didn't eat at all. There were days where they were feasting, and insulin resistance was pretty much created right before winter. So when the nature has produced enough fruit in a certain parts of the world only, also if you're in a part of the world where it's cold and it's freezing, you're not getting any fruit, which is pretty much protein and fat 365. But where you find fruit, remember, you're still competing with other organisms, and then you're competing with insects and mold and all that stuff that is going to pretty much take over the fruit as well. So you got to be very quick to find it. But when you find it in the good amounts, your body turns insulin resistant. Bears deliver themselves type 2 diabetes before every winter.
Yeah.
Just so they can store as much body fat as possible so they can get through the winter, because winter means one thing: calorie deficiency. There's always a calorie deficiency during winter time because hunting is a lot harder when there's 4 or 5 feet of snow, and when the visibility is very low. So the body is pretty much getting ready for this period, and over millions of years, it had created this beautiful, helpful resistance, the insulin resistance, so it can store enough body fat. So the body will pretty much use very little energy for a current situation. It will make you feel exhausted. You're gonna feel tired because you're not getting energy for presence. And then you're storing the body fat that you're going to live off of for the future months in the winter. But the problem with the insulin resistance, it's only meant to last a month and a half, and then when winter is here and body starts eating up its body fat. Well, these days, people live in insulin resistance for 20, 30 years. And we actually had a conference with Howe and one of the other professionals, he was a neurology professional on a human brain, that is taking care of the patients with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia, and he swears that pretty much all these disease on the brain is caused by the insulin resistance.
Yeah.
The brain didn't get the energy, so it got sick. That's simple. You didn't feed the brain for the last 15 years properly. You felt terribly for the last 15 years. So you were slowly degrading the health of your brain until your brain got sick because it didn't have ability to get a sufficient amount of energy that it needed. So how do you cure insulin resistance? You switch the mechanisms. You stop consuming massive amounts of sugar and carbohydrates, and you let the brain feed off of ketones. And you let your body get fat adapted. That's how you cure insulin resistance.
That was one of the best explanations I've ever heard about insulin resistance. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful. The cool thing about all of that, like you said, carbohydrates are not essential. So we start eating more fats and proteins and eat less or none of the carbohydrates. Our bodies do fat adapt. And then this magical thing starts to happen. Like, I think a lot of people understand that, like, or maybe they've heard that, like, fasting is a really good thing for them. And they try to do fasting, but they're not able to do it because they're so hungry and hangry and moody, and their cravings are through the roof, and they just can't execute a fast. Where people that try eating this way, especially on a carnivore diet, they fast effortlessly, easily. Like, it's almost an inconvenience to go eat. It's time consuming. People are just simply not hungry. They got to go about their day and do all kinds of things. So can you explain why fasting is such a great tool and why it should only really be used when you are fat adapted, especially on a carnivore diet?
So most importantly, if you want to live life with a carbohydrate consumption, you must develop metabolic flexibility. That means that your body will start consuming glucose when the glucose is in presence and ketones when the glucose is not in presence. Meaning you can switch from fat adaptation to the glucose consumption, and when the glucose is gone, body is calm, goes back to the fat consumption. How do you achieve that? Well, one great way to achieve that is intermittent fasting. During the feed-in time, when you eat your meal and the meal includes some carbohydrates, your body's processing the glucose. Now that glucose is not going to last forever. It runs out at a certain degree. And then the body switches into a ketogenic state and starts burning off fat without really any problems, any hunger, and feeling that makes you upset and anxious, because when you are carbohydrate addicted, you can't really go without carbohydrates for a long period of time. You get sweaty, start getting shaky, start getting hungry, hangry. In certain degrees, you get hyperglycemia, which is the drop in the blood sugar levels. And that's very unhealthy. I mean, a healthy human should never get to the point of hyperglycemia for no reason. You're way too sugar addicted, which means your body is pretty much incapable of producing its own glucose, because why should it? You've been feeding it sugar every single time you got hungry. So the gluconeogenesis, the process that is designed to create sugar in your liver, is not even necessary for the past 15 years. Because every time you get hungry, boom, sugar. You get hungry, boom, sugar. So that's why you start feeling sick. And you feel like, oh, I wouldn't be able to go without food for 8 to 10 hours. I would die. Yes, with the current state of your metabolism, you wouldn't feel great. You wouldn't die. Nobody would die, but you wouldn't feel great. Let's put it this way. But if we make you fat adapted, now you can go long periods of time, 8, 10, 20 hours. Now, currently, I'm 70 hours fasted. I have not eaten for the last 70 hours. Okay, that's a 3-day fast that I'm doing right now. I'm going to break my fast after this podcast. I work out first, which is completely fine. I work out after 70 hours of not eating. Okay. And I
Think
still
about that
perform
for the
very well.
listener. Think about that. Think about that. That's so important to say. Thank you.
Yeah, so right after this, I can still beat my previous performance. Yesterday, when I exercised, I was 48 hours faster than I beat my previous performance because
Yep.
my body is using up stored body fat for the fuel. And I feel amazing because the ketones are the primary source of the energy. So my muscles live off of the ketones too. I experience no performance deficiency. So I don't consume carbohydrates on daily anymore. I used to. I cut them out completely. My life quality is a lot better without the carbohydrates, and I put on a lot leaner mass. Like I eat a lot of fat, a lot of protein, and my physique is a lot tighter and better looking on protein and fat only. Every single time, especially at this fat adaptation state, if I consume a lot of carbohydrates, I get puffy and watery very quickly because that's not my preferred source of energy anymore. So my body overreacts every single time I consume carbohydrates. That's another thing to recognize is that once when you're running strictly off of ketones and protein, you start eating some sugar. Let's say your uncle has a birthday party and you have a couple of beers with him and a couple of slices of pizza, you're going to blow up like 7 pounds from that because the body is not used to the carbohydrate consumption anymore and the water retention will be insane. So pretty much I don't consume that on a daily basis anymore. I consume carbohydrates very rarely. But on protein and fat only, I'm performing the best I ever performed. I feel the best I ever felt, and I have metabolic flexibility, meaning that I can switch between 2 metabolisms easily. So let's say I went out for a sushi and I had a massive sushi meal. Right after the sushi meal, I can go 40 hours with no food at all and feel great, which means I just consumed 400 or 500 grams of carbs. I can go 2 days with no food and feeling great. If I did that, if I was sugar addicted, by nighttime I would be starving. Meaning I would have to eat more. And if I ate more that night, where I already had a massive amount of carbohydrates, protein, and fat for lunch, well, now I'm counting calories at night again, and I'm getting fatter and fatter. That's where the problem is. Carbohydrates do make you hungry. They make you hungry. They suppress the leptin sensitivity, so your brain is not getting as much signal that you're full. When you're eating steak and eggs, your leptin sensitivity is really high. As soon as your body's full, it sends the signal to your brain through the hormone called leptin that, hey, we've had enough food, shut the appetite down, we're good. So the appetite goes down, and all of a sudden you're just talking to the person with a piece of steak on your fork, and you're just waving around. And you don't even put it in your mouth, you just sit there.
It's amazing how strong those signals are. That hormonal signal to stop eating when you are wolfing down eggs and it's delicious, and all of a sudden, like you're right, you may have one more little bite, you can't eat it. It's impossible.
You get sick of it. You don't want it. You're just talking to the other person with the half full plate. But if I tell you, hey, do you want to have some cheesecake? Yeah, sure, I'll have some. You'll have a cheesecake that suppresses the leptin sensitivity and it allows you to overeat. That's why we have a morbid obesity problem. People overeat. And that food that is really high on fat and sugar all in once is making you insulin resistant. So now when you're in an insulin resistant state, eating foods that are really high on fat and sugar and support further and further insulin resistance, which is eventually going to turn you into a diabetic, you're getting fatter and fatter. And with all that extra body fat, you're getting more pressure on your heart. You're getting more pressure on your cardiovascular system. And then you develop kidney disease because #1 reason why kidneys are getting sick in the United States is high blood pressure. It's not a protein, it's the high blood pressure. We have over 2,100 studies that have been reviewed, and there was a meta-analysis that took 30 of these studies that were the most important to review all of them to find a relationship between protein and kidneys. There was none. There was actually a study that shown people with a stage 4 kidney failure who started consuming more animal protein, getting their EGFR levels better. That means the filtration of their kidneys has improved, which means that pretty much what's killing your body is all the processed food that we have in today's society, all the sugar and the trans fats, and everything that's being represented as healthy is actually not healthy. Have you seen a recommendation for the new food pyramid?
Oh, the Tufts food compass that came out, or the United States recommendations.
Yes, like the #1 best food in the world was watermelon or some shit.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, preposterous.
Cheerios was like #3, and red meat and eggs was the last one, to avoid. So if you are pretty much sticking to the recommendations like this, you are going to certainly experience your health going down the drain. Certainly. And if people think, oh, I can't only eat meat and eggs and, I can't only do this type of diet. All right, let's call it you can't eat healthy. Like it's too, you don't want to diet. You don't want to be limited. Have you tried being sick? It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder, trust me on that one. Because when you're sick, Monday, you have a checkup with your GP. Tuesday, you got to go see your cardiologist. Thursday morning, you got to go for the blood work. Saturday, you got your CT. This is your life. You got the insurance bill, you got the deductible, pay for this, you're on a hold with the insurance, then you move, you're looking for the new GP in the area, that's your life. It's not life. Once I started consuming meat and eggs only, listen, I was the first one to say, when you'll hear about carnivore, very first time, you're gonna think it's insane, and you should. Because you never heard of it, and it goes against everything you ever heard. But you will start listening to it, developing your education around it, understanding the human organism and its needs, and then you give it a shot. And when I gave it a shot, my life changed because my mental health got the best it's ever been. My physical health got the best it's ever been. My muscle mass skyrocketed and I lost tons of body fat without any effort. Without any effort. I have a friend who had an obese dog. The dog was 85 pounds. I told him, just skip everything, just give the dog raw meat. Give him some ground beef or some steaks and watch. The dog is down 9 pounds in 2 weeks. 9 pounds in 2 weeks, all right?
Amazing.
So the carnivore diet doesn't only work on humans, but it also works on other animals and other species who are carnivorous as well. Now with the humans, I have achieved results like, just for example, with Howe. Okay, we have a person who we helped lose over 160 pounds within a couple of months.
Is this Julie?
Yes, of course. And she's done so well. She's done so well on her diet, on her exercise. She's down over 160 pounds. Personally, I average females about 40 pounds in 4 months, and males about 50 pounds in 4 months. Men tend to lose a little bit faster than women. It's just a general rule. But it's an insane weight loss when you think about it. You have a client that 6 months later is 70 pounds down and never have to worry about the weight loss again because it's done. It's done, and he'll learn how he's supposed to be eating, and he will never put on that weight. Now that's gonna have a drastic influence over his confidence, overall feeling, presentation, and people are then more successful in other aspects of life too. When they have more energy, they can pay attention to their surroundings. When a husband is energetic after his 10 hours of shift at work, he comes home and he takes care of the children so his wife can go, to the other room and work out or go see her friend or something. That improves their relationship. Now, he is more outspoken. He is more out there thriving instead of living in shadows. It really takes a good feeling for you to stand in front of 150 people and give a good presentation. You got to feel good. Because if you don't feel good, the last thing you want to do is be exposed.
Great point. That's a fantastic point. We heard about Julie and you working with her from Howe. I've been in contact with her. She's going to be on the show here in a few weeks, so I'm so excited to talk to her. But you realize, like, you hear the numbers and you hear like 32-year-old woman goes into, assisted care at age 32, again at 650 pounds. She's there for 9 years and loses 100 pounds. I don't know what the time frame of that was, but she only lost 100 pounds in 9 years. Then she goes to Howe's facility, starts working with you, and has lost 160 pounds in a few months. And again, those numbers are staggering, and it's amazing. Those are numbers. Julie is a human. She is a human being that has been through hell in her life, and now she's got hope. She could turn herself around, and she posts about it all the time on Instagram. Like, my new life is going to be amazing. I'm going to travel and do all these things. And you realize, like, this human being has suffered greatly because of the shitty, stupid advice that she's been told her entire life about processed foods and whole grains and all this shit, and avoid all the protein and avoid the meat and avoid the fat and all this stuff. And now I'm so glad I found her and found you and learned this story, because that is a human that now has a completely different outlook on life, which is a miracle. It's amazing.
Exactly. So, I get requests about the coaching every single day, and I talk to people about their stories. I heard all the stories in the world, except one. Nobody ever came to me with the story and said, Daniel, I've been pigging out on steak for the last 4 years and I'm 500 pounds and I need help. This has never happened, ever. People do not gain body fat from carnivore diet. And now, is it possible? Yes, it is. But you're not going to consume that much of fat and protein because the leptin will shut you down. It's like the steak, just the idea of having another bite of steak, it just seems disgusting to you. You don't want to have more meat when you're full. But having more beer, having more cheesecake, having more sugar, that's a whole other story. You would like to have some more dessert that allows you to overeat. So pretty much just simple consumption of animal protein, animal fat will make you lose weight. And then what I do, I structure the calories into a certain high and low days, just as I described in my book that I wrote, Weight Loss Without Plateau. You can find it on Amazon. Again, it's Weight Loss Without Plateau. The reason why I called it Weight Loss Without Plateau, because you can't just go in a calorie deficit every single day and expect the body to lose weight. And here's the reason why. Just like we talked about the insulin resistance, the body has developed this phenomenal ability to reject the energy for the current situation and save it for the future. The body has also developed this beautiful ability of metabolic adaptation. That means that your metabolism will adapt to the certain amount of calories that you're consuming daily if you're in a deficit for a long period of time. Now, without metabolic adaptation, you would not make it through human evolution. Because, as we said before, there's no way you were having, through the 4 million of years, sufficient amount of calories every single day. Well, it's expected that humans jumped off the trees about 6 million years ago. Then we went through some adaptation period, living underground, and by 4 million years ago, we found the first a straight-up woman called Lucy, Homo habilis, who was carnivorous. Actually, when you take a look at her delta 15 nitrogen, it was 13.5, which means she was pure carnivorous. So then this, since 4 million years ago, that was her primary food intake. Now, back to the fat adaptation. If you're consuming very little calories every single day, your body has to drop the amount of energy it's burning every single day, because the body always thinks future and survival. So in terms of survival, it doesn't make sense to burn 4,000 or 5,000 calories every day when you only consume 2,000. So the body will try to push the BMR as low as possible until it gets to a point where it can't push the BMR anymore. And if you keep eating less, and if you keep doing more and more physical activity, only thing the body can do is change its shapes so it can burn less. By changing shapes means lose muscle. Muscle is the tissue that requires way too much oxygen and blood flow. And if you're only consuming 2,000 calories a day and your calorie outcome is 4,000 calories a day, you're just owning a Rolls Royce that you don't have payment for. You can't afford it. So the body will bring that muscle mass lower so it can further push the BMR lower. This is the problem that I see commonly every single day, where people are trying to lose weight, so they eat very little calories. It works in the beginning. They drop 10, 20 pounds. After 20 pounds, they're stuck. So they start running more. They start eating less. And the only thing that's happening, they're looking worse and worse and worse. And pretty much all the way that they're losing after that is just pure muscle mass. Now, in your interest as a human being is to carry as much muscle mass on your body as possible that your genetic ability allows you to. So you want to max out your genetic abilities to carry the muscle mass and your bone density, because that's pretty much the only thing that's going to keep you on your feet when you get disease. So that's where a lot of old people suffer. Let's say an old person who doesn't have a muscle mass and no bone density and is already in a wheelchair. Life works at a certain principle where you walk straight forward and straight up. Then you start sitting down. After you start sitting down, you start laying down. And after you start laying down, you just pretty much go under the ground. This is the life evolution, how it works. You're healthy, you're walking like nothing. You start getting aches, you're starting to sit, you start more sitting. The more you sit, the more muscle you lose, the more bone density you lose. Then you start laying down because you have back aches when you're sitting. And after you're laying down, pretty much oftentimes there's no way back.
That's it.
So that's why it is in your own interest to keep as much muscle mass and bone density as possible, because if the disease comes, the muscle mass will make you push into the hospital bed and walk and struggle towards restroom by yourself at a high age. That's why resistant training and high protein diet isn't necessary. And if you're a human, it's your responsibility to fuel the body with the right sources of protein and fat.
It's your responsibility. I love that. That might be uncomfortable for some people, but I agree 1,000%. And I think that's the most empowering message that we can give people. It is under your control. You can try this. You can do this. There's nothing stopping you from doing this. And I love that you made the point earlier. Like, this should sound weird to you. This should be scary to you because we've been taught the other message. Well, guess what? The other message is clearly not working. Go take a walk around the mall and see what's going on. And you're going to understand that we chose the wrong thing. So by doing some of these unconventional things, you can just try them and you can see how they work. And it can start with your next meal. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until January 1st. You don't have to wait until next Monday when every diet starts. Start with one meal. Have a meal of steak and eggs, like you said, see how you feel, and keep trying, because you're right. It is your responsibility, but the result will be your life. Like you said, this has been an awesome conversation. I've absolutely loved talking to you and hearing from you and learning about you and your programs. Do you mind letting us know where people can go to find you and connect with your work and what things you have to offer on your website?
2 places. Place number 1, my Instagram, bm_trainer. Second place is my website. It's www.bmprotrainer.com. It's bmprotrainer.com. You can find everything about my services on this website. And also, I encourage you to join my private group where I can engage with you and I can talk to you directly in the thread, and all of my clients and people I've been helping with, and people who are like-minded are in that group as well. We can be discussing any topic regarding exercise and regarding nutrition, also business, because I love business and I highly support every single person to promote their business in my page. We can be talking about any topic in there that is pretty much focused on self-improvement.
That is fantastic. We will be sure to link to all of that in the show notes. Daniel Magyar, thank you so very much. Your story is amazing, but to know that you found the right advice, you were able to implement that with yourself first, but then to go out and share that with the world. And I just, if nothing else, just thinking about the people in Howe's assisted living homes that get to work with you, Julie that gets to work with you, lifting with her X-bar and eating meat and seeing amazing results and having a completely new outlook in life, I just think is so inspiring and amazing. Your work is awesome. Thank you so very much for all the great explanations today and taking us through all the things that you've learned about health and fitness. And thank you for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate your invite. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.